and welcome to another episode of Transport in Africa, a weekly podcast dedicated to spotlight cutting-edge research, innovation, and ideas shaping transport systems across Africa. I am your host, Polycarp Chebe. In each episode, we sit down with a researcher, practitioner, or change maker who is redefining how mobility works in Africa. In today's episode, we are focusing on walking, one of the most essential and sustainable modes of transport, but often overlooked in transport planning and policy. Across many African cities, walking is not just a choice, but a necessity. In fact, between 40% to 75% of urban residents in Africa rely on walking as their primary mode of transport to different destinations. Yet, walking remains under-prioritized in transport planning, infrastructure investment, and policy discussions. Therefore, the question of how to create more walkable, inclusive, and dignified cities for all, considering the central role of walking in daily mobility, the growing presence of paratransit, the rapid increase in motorization, the multifunctional use of roads as movement corridors and as spaces for socioeconomic activities, and the reality of limited transport budgets across many African cities remain crucial issues to be addressed. Joining me to uncover some of the realities related to planning for walking in Africa is Dr. Gladys Nyachieo, a seasoned researcher in urban mobility governance in Africa. Hello, Dr. Gladys. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Chebe. Thank you for giving us those insights too. I am happy to be part of this. My name, as you've heard, Dr. Gladys Nyachieo. I'm a senior lecturer and chair of Department of Sociology at the Faculty of Social Sciences at Multimedia University of Kenya. I have diverse interests, and they include transport governance, road safety, public transport, commercial motorcycle use, gender and mobility, and most important, walking. I am currently a principal investigator in a very funded project called ARP, African Research Program, under the MARC program, whose title is Making and Implementing Decisions in Urban Transport in Africa, MID-UTA. And one of our projects in this 3-year program is walking.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gladys, and once more, thank you for accepting to be part of this conversation. For our listeners who are not familiar, can you provide an overview of the current walking landscape in Africa, highlighting how walking serves both as a mode of transport and as part of daily life for many communities?
So across Africa, I can say that walking is the most dominant mode of transport. And it is not only a mode of transport, it's actually a lifestyle. Most people walk to access work, to access hospital, to access facilities. They walk everywhere. The walking landscape in Africa in terms of focus, we find that most of the time walking is not really prioritized as a mode of transport. It is weakly governed, it is underfunded, and most cities do not even have plans for walking. I may say that there's a study we did for Nakuru and Jinja, and also Kisii and Mzuzu in Malawi. And we found that the main challenges are that there actually are no walkways, there is inadequate facilities for walking, and not many plans for walking in future, although some things are changing as we speak.
Hey, Dr. Gladys, thank you for already shedding light on some of the challenges plaguing walking across African cities. In most cases, we discover that walking is sometimes considered as a default mode of transport, in which some people think that even if we don't provide infrastructure for walking, people will still walk. Others see walking as a transport mode for the poor, while some consider walking as a transport mode that does not generate income. From your experience, what are some of the common misconceptions about walking as a mode of transport in Africa?
Like walking is seen as a poor people thing. Songs, people singing about success, and they are putting out videos that show you're moving from walking we're moving from bicycles and you're going to a car. That suggests that you have actually succeeded in life. So there is this misconception that walking is for the poor, and also for the planners, the urban planners and the people who govern in cities, city managers. There is no way you'll find that a road starts for cars and stops somewhere abruptly, and that is it. But for walking, you'll find a walkway that starts well and gets to a point where it actually breaks down and there's nothing that is giving its continuity. So the misconception that walking, people will always walk, is wrong. The fact that people have always walked and people still walk should not allow the planners not to focus on walking. Walking is good for the environment, even from a climate change perspective. So these misconceptions are actually undermining planning for walking from the governance perspective, and even for the people on the ground, those who are walking themselves. It has been sold to us as a poor person thing, and people are perceiving it so.
Thank you very much for shedding light on some of the misconceptions towards walking. Can you highlight some noteworthy policies, strategies, or initiatives across African countries that have been successfully implemented to support or improve walking as a mode of transport?
First of all, I will start with some development in Malawi. As you recall, I have just mentioned that we did a study for Malawi cities of Mzuzu. Around that time, Malawi signed a charter, a walking charter. To what extent it has been implemented, I may not know as per now, but that is one way of showing that finally we are thinking about walking. For Nairobi, we have the NMT policy and other upgrades, and also other policies and initiatives that support this are also NMT for like Kampala. And generally speaking, we have other initiatives like PAPAM that is under the UNEP that is also working towards active transport. For example, also Dakar is also working on walking policies that enable people now to use the BRT, same as Lagos that is trying to increase the use of BRT by promoting walking. So there are quite a number of policies that have come up to support this. And in last, I think 2023, ITDP did a study and there's a publication they had which mentioned that public transport starts with walking. So this means that even for the other policies to work for public transport, etc., they would need NMT policies to support their work or to support even use of public transport. So walking becomes very important, and policies and initiatives that would promote that are very useful. For example, in Nairobi, the NMT policy has put aside or suggests for putting aside 20% of the budget to focus on facilities and implementing walking facilities. And we've seen some good works, for example, on some roads like Mwendimbingu Street, Aga Khan Walk, and etc. that are also supporting walking.
I'm actually happy to hear some of the initiatives or policies that have been put in place at different spatial scales, especially at city levels across Africa, aimed at improving walking. And especially, I'm happy to hear that we are not just moving towards policies, but there are also budgets that are set aside to ensure that these policies are actually implemented on the ground. Dr. Gladys, what do you think government and decision makers need to do to ensure that walking is not just possible, but also safe, dignified, and valued as a primary mode of transport in African cities?
There's a lot that governments need to do to support walking. As I've already said, and we all know that walking is a major mode of transport, and for it to be put in focus, there is need for the government to have laws, to have design standards, and also to have those dedicated budgets that I've just mentioned to deliver these walking facilities. you realize that walking facilities may not be as expensive as the main roads, but they are given little attention. So, and people may not be able to compete with fast moving cars in environments that are not conducive. So, if governments can take this seriously, make sure that they decide, because decision making is key here, and prioritizing and agenda setting. So it's a whole collection of actors that will make this work. But government, because of its power to be able to implement and also to fund and also to get funders, they should be able to make sure that our plans for urban transport include walkways as dedicated projects, not as being included in the main carriageway. Because when we do this, most of the time is that that aspect is forgotten, especially if there is less money by the time they are finishing, they do not consider. So government should make sure that there is focus on walking. If you look at the statistics for many countries, and especially East African countries, sub-Saharan Africa, you find that so many people are dying on our roads. These are pedestrians. The other day I was traveling and I found somebody had been knocked by a car. So this means that our environments for walking are not safe. For example, now Nairobi is working on an underpass towards the Green Park where people go to take their vehicles. It's going to make sure that the pedestrians are safe. So government should work with all sectors to ensure that there's safety on our roads. The transport agencies should come together and find a way of designing better roads, coming up with better policies that support pedestrians and walking infrastructure in our cities.
Yeah, thank you very much for raising this very pertinent issue of prioritizing walking as a mode of transport. I think that is the starting point for all government authorities. There is actually need to prioritize walking as one of the essential modes of transport, because when we look across Africa, we discover that there are infrastructural developments sometimes, like there are flyovers that are constructed. There are many highways, and the issue of limited budget is not just enough, because just like you said, the amount of money sometimes needed to provide a walking facility or to provide a sidewalk for pedestrians is far less than the amount of money that is used in constructing flyovers. So there is actually this need for prioritizing walking, especially when it comes to funding for walking. Doc, one of the key issues that we, especially as researchers, face is the issue of collaborating effectively with the government. How can researchers, urban planners, and civil society organizations better collaborate with governments to inspire and to support more inclusive planning for walking?
Thank you for that very, very important question. And I think this is one of the key issues that we should be looking at. How do we collaborate? How do we work together? I'll start by saying that sometimes governments, it's not that they do not want to do what we are asking or what we really need to see. Sometimes they do not have enough information to work on. And this information, most of the time, is in research. So researchers need to be able to find a good way of making this information, passing this information across to the government. So when research is done and we want to share this information, sometimes we bombard the government or the people in charge with something that we have already done. Best practice should be that we start with them. We see a problem, for example, walking in the city of maybe Nairobi is not working. We go to them, we work with them on the research questions. We try to format everything with them somehow so that we can do what we call co-production, and so that we can involve them from the start. So involving the government from the start makes them understand what we are up to, and even the recommendation we may give later may be well accepted or taken in a better way. globally, when we are talking about walking, we need to have the whole system. We need to have it lighting. We need to have facilities for those who are disabled. We need to have safe crossing. We need to have proper environment, clean and safe for people to walk, especially women who cannot walk at night when if there is no lighting. So when we do research in such areas and share this with them and co-produce, not just working in our cocoon and then going out there and telling them, now this is what you need to do. No, it needs to be a collaboration. And if we don't work with industry, then our results remain with us. So most of the time, this is what we do. So researchers need to work closely with the people who are going to actually implement the decisions. Like, for example, currently Multimedia University is working with NAMATA and is also working on an MOU with NTSA. These are all transport agencies. And that means that as we produce our research, we work with them. We are able to figure these things out together. And it's also a process of learning. Discovered that most of the time, some of our key leaders may not have an idea of exactly what we are talking. So by working with them and doing pilots with them, we are working as a community. We are solving our problems together. We are just not taking the solutions to them. We are working on the solutions together with them. And that will make it better. And therefore, I would recommend that probably we have embedded researchers in agencies like NTSA, like now, for example, Multimedia University works with them in NAMATA, etc. So that we are looking at the same issues and wondering how to solve them together. That way, acceptance is better. And also how we disseminate this. So sometimes as researchers, we go so technical, and therefore the message is not passed and accepted the way we want to. So collaboration is key for effective implementation of walking and walking facilities and also policies.
So as researchers, what I take is we need to move away from producing knowledge as individuals and co-produce this knowledge with governments, agents, as well as for civil society organization. They need to work in synergy, in collaboration with the government, and in this way we can be able to identify the problems that are associated with working as well as solve them together. Dr. Gladys, from your perspective, are there any specific cities or communities in Africa that you can cite as leading examples in making walking safer and more accessible? And if there are, what are some of the lessons that other African cities can learn from leading cities?
Thank you very much. That is very important. And of course, as I've already highlighted, is that a lot is changing in the landscape in Africa on walking. I would point out a few cities that I think and I've visited that, some I've visited, like Kigali. In Kigali, the walking facilities are quite friendly. I would wake up in the morning and walk around and feel safe. They have safe walking facilities. They have even car-free days that people do not use cars around that time. And also they have sidewalks and green corridors and safe pedestrian crossing, which actually encourage someone to walk. So Kigali, for me, I would say it has prioritized walking, and it also has car-free zones where you can just walk around without having to check everywhere, because it is normally very hectic to walk in an environment where you also are having cars, because you are never comfortable. Another city that has in Africa that is showing a lot of progress is Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. It has quite wide pedestrian walkways, which is a good thing. And they also have a non-motorized transport strategy of 2018, which is actually really, I think, helping. I can't forget my own country. There's a lot of improvement I can report. We have Mwindimbingu Street, which has already been worked on, and it is very good street to walk. Also, we have Mamangina Street, which was actually pedestrianized, and Aga Khan Walk. And there's a lot of improvement on Kenyatta Avenue as we speak right now. So Nairobi also is a is a town that, or a city that I would say there's some improvement. And for Lagos, because of the pedestrian access to BRT, there's some improvements going on. So I would say those few, of course, there is also Cape Town. I can note that there is some improvement for walking for pedestrians. And of course, there are others maybe that I may not know, but those are the ones that I'm very much aware of. But I know since we are all doing now research, VREF is funding research on walking, and there's a lot of focus now on walking. This is going to improve the situation, especially if we share our research and also let our leaders understand the importance of walking from the health perspective, from the climate change perspective, and even from savings, because it is cost effective to walk, and especially if there are shorter distances that people are able to cover on walking. So yeah, I may add, but I think I would be safe talking about the ones that I actually know.
Thank you very much for enumerating some of the cities that are serving now like model cities or for other African cities. And I'm happy to say that from my own few experience, I think most African cities, city authorities are putting efforts together with different stakeholders to see how working can actually be prioritized. And there are different programs coming up like pedestrianization of streets, like providing sidewalks, safe sidewalks, and sometimes implementing car-free zones maybe on weekends or once a month, which are laudable efforts in improving walking as a mode of transport. Dr. Gladys, before we wrap up this conversation, is there anything else you would like to share, perhaps about your future projects or a final message for our listeners?
Thank you very much. And I would like to say that walking is here to stay. It is with us as much as we are buying cars, as much as we are having other alternatives. Walking is something that all governments need to put into consideration for the reasons that I've already mentioned, for the economy, for climate change, for health, among others. I'm currently the principal investigator for an African research program called MidUta. And in this program, we have two projects, one for public transport and one for walking. We also have like 3 work streams, but I will focus on the walking stream. Based on my previous research on governance for walking in Kisii and in Mzuzu, that was a comparative study. We've even published a paper out of it. You can check it out. Decision making is key in making sure that implementation takes place. So I am urging the decision makers to ensure that there is that prioritization of walking. I'm also asking media to focus on media because they are very good in agenda setting. And if they bring this issue out, then it gets more focus. So I would say that we need to support walking for all the reasons. And one final thing maybe I should say, we should invest in a good shoe for walking. I think this is an area that we don't really talk about. One of my friends had gone to a certain country, and when she came back, she told me people there really, they invest in shoes, walking shoes. I think it's the same gospel I would say to the pedestrians. And since we do not have like a pedestrian association that speaks like a car association or an automobile association, I think that is why most of the time we don't really have our voices heard out there. So walking should be central in planning for transport in all our cities so that we have proper facilities for everyone, including those that the PWDs that actually have very serious problems moving from place to place, especially in the cities that we have in Africa. In the current program, we have MidUta, where we are looking at making and implementing decisions in African cities. We are going to look at how decisions are made for walking. For example, the non-motorized transport policy. We look at how it was started, how it has progressed to this point, and whether it is being implemented or not. We are also looking at certain roads, for example, the Mwidimbingu Street. Who are the actors who started thinking about what we need to do something about this, the plans they had when the project was started, how much it was funded for, who funded it, and all such that will give us a view of how decisions are made and implemented for walking facilities in African cities. So thank you very much.
Before we part, maybe just to briefly enlighten our listeners on these programs, are there specific African cities that this program is focused on, or it's a program that is across Africa?
Currently, VREF has funded 3 African research programs. One of them is this one that I'm talking about. This is an African program. It is for sub-Saharan Africa, and it focuses on African cities. Other people from other places could be involved in the research, but the research is based in Africa, in the urban regions of Africa, looking at various issues in transport and mobility.
Brings us to the end of this episode of your weekly podcast on transport in Africa. Dr. Gladys, once more, thank you very much for honoring our invitation and for sharing your perspective on planning for walking in Africa. I wish you all the best in your professional journey.
Thank you very much, Chebe, and thank you for this noble initiative. I think it's going to help us a lot.
If you enjoyed this episode or learned something new, please consider subscribing to our page. You can also contribute by sharing this podcast with friends and colleagues who are interested in transport and mobility issues in Africa. If you are a researcher or practitioner working on transport in Africa and would like to share your work on this platform, feel free to reach out to me at chebechesifu@campus.technion.ac.il and we can discuss how to feature your work on this show. Until next time, I am your host, Polycarp Chebe. Thanks for listening.